This week's top Disney news stories include Shanghai Disneyland reopening, updates on Disney Springs planned reopening, and what is likely for other parks. There are also stories about The Mandalorian, Hamilton, and Frozen 2. Stay tuned, and I'll break it all down. Well, hello there! My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now it's that time of the week once more, so on to this week's biggest Disney news stories. As is often the case, and certainly has been over these past few months, some of the biggest stories are often directly or indirectly related to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. This time, many of those stories are related to reopenings. Our top story of the week is the reopening of Shanghai Disneyland in China. On Monday, May 11th, Shanghai Disneyland opened its doors for the first time in months. Now, we don't know exactly what the capacity was for the park. We do know it was severely limited. The Chinese government has put a total cap on the attendance for Disneyland over in Shanghai to 24,000, about 30% of its total, but we also know that they are opening far below that, although we've never gotten an exact number. That said, Bob Chapek did say that they intend to increase by about 5,000 each week, and we've heard that it'll be a few weeks until they get to that 24,000, so we can try to make some guesses, maybe 10,000 here this week, although we don't have an answer on that number for sure. But seems like a fair guess. Bob Chapek also said that when the Chinese government does eventually raise the cap beyond 30%, they expect to still do a similar ramping up stair-step process of increasing bit by bit rather than instantly jumping to any kind of new numbers. We got a few pieces from Shanghai Disneyland Senior Vice President of Operations Andrew Bolstein, who made some comments about how they had done various studies with their guests and they found that it was actually easier to tell guests where not to stand in general and to just leave them an empty space to stand in. Now that said, we've seen that they actually do both in the course of the park, depending on where they're at. Now you may remember from last week some of the different pieces I talked about as to what those different limitations are over at Shanghai Disneyland. Like the temperature check, if you're higher than 99.1 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 37.3 Celsius, you get rejected and you are not coming into the park. The characters are not directly interacting with guests, you can only see them from a distance, and we've got some cool pictures of that too. And the whole thing was sold out, although one should note, even for being sold out, it actually looked fairly empty, which is unsurprising if we're talking way below its capacity. If we're talking maybe 10% of its capacity, it shouldn't be a big surprise. There was a comment that even by 10:30 in the morning on Shanghai time on that Monday of opening, that the wait was still only a mere 5 minutes for the Tron Light Cycle Power Run roller coaster. And for the Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Sunken Treasure too, which are the two biggest rides in the entire park. Man, if you can be there after it opens by a decent bit and still get a 5-minute wait on those, whew, nice. Well, I mean, it might be nicer if we didn't have to worry about everything else that is involved in what got it to being a 5-minute wait. Now that said, there are also a number of things that are closed or replaced. For instance, they went ahead and took the Mickey Storybook Express Parade and replaced it with a Mickey and Friends Express character procession. Try to make it so that there's less reason for giant gatherings. Or the evening Ignite the Dream fireworks gets replaced by an evening Magical Moments projection show. Also, things like the Captain Jack Sparrow stunt show and the Frozen sing-along show are just plain gone. But they still do have some of the smaller shows, and they just use some yellow boxes on the ground to help make sure people end up separated enough for each of the groups. So that means there are still things like the Tai Chi exercises over in the Gardens of Imagination, which are led by Donald Duck and Chip and Dale. So at least there still are some of those activities, but everything's a little bit trickier when you've got to get that social distancing in there. And another thing that was definitely seen over in the park were people wiping down and sanitizing all those different surfaces again and again. consistently seen that one. And just a quick refresher for anyone who wasn't aware, some of the things to expect over there in Shanghai Disneyland is you have the temperature check on the way in, the much reduced capacity, tickets are for a specific day and you have to have your Chinese government health QR code and a government ID when you come in. You must wear a mask at all times, with exceptions for things like dining. There are markings on the ground to go ahead and maintain social distancing, as well as rides and restaurants also doing things to help make sure people have spacing between them. So there you have it. We do have one Disney park that is reopened. Now, some of the questions, of course, are, will it stay open? Is there a possibility of it closing again if conditions worsen to a good degree in China? Say another major outbreak wave. Well, time will tell. But for the time being, this is giving Disney hands-on experience with what to do over in their other parks and what to potentially expect for the rest of us when those parks do reopen. Now, as I always put as a caveat, when you're in China, China does have massive testing as well as contact tracing going on, and they've gotten things under control to a degree. If you're looking at the rest of the world, that is not necessarily the case in a number of the other spots where there are Disney parks. Something to definitely bear in mind if we're talking about potential for reopening. Okay, moving onward. Our next story is about Disney Springs and its planned reopening on Wednesday, May 20th. Well, we just got some updates here today, Saturday, this is May 16th, and VP of Disney Springs, Matt Simon, went ahead and put up a blog over on the Disney Parks blog. That's the official blog for the Disney Parks. And we got some information as to what to expect when things do reopen. Some of these, again, are what we already would expect. We already knew that there was going to be limited parking, so what we have found out is that the parking will only be in the orange and lime garages. All the surface parking lots will be closed. There will also only be 5 entrances into Disney Spring, and at each of those there will be temperature screenings. Unlike Shanghai Disneyland, your temperature just needs to be below 100.4, so a little less restrictive. And that's it. If your temperature is above 100.4, what's going to happen is you're going to get directed to another area for a rescreening, just to be sure. And if you get a second measurement of 100.4 or higher, then you and everyone in your party are not going into Disney Springs. And also, to get into Disney Springs, you are going to have to wear a face covering. You're going to have a mask on your face. And that's going to be true, of course, for the employees, the cast members, as well as any of the guests going in. Also, not a surprise at all. And there is at least the exception of when you're sitting at the dining table. So, unsurprising exception sitting in there. They're also doing a good bit to work on physical distancing with a number of ground markings to help ensure there's a good distance and queuing. Also, they've got a good bit of work on one-way directions going into and out of stores to help make sure that the stores don't go above whatever capacity they're trying to limit them to. And on top of all that, they're also adding a new team of cast members who will engage with the different guests and make sure to help promote the physical distancing guidelines that they have in the different areas. And it should be unsurprising that, like we see in Shanghai Disneyland or anywhere else, lots and lots and lots of cleaning. And plenty of hand washing stations around too. Now, Disney is not making it so you must have a contactless payment. In fact, they're not even taking cash out. They're just recommending you don't use cash, and they're also giving options for payments that are not contact at all. Now, one question you might have is, well, what if I have a dining reservation there and, well, Disney Springs is full because it's closed due to having reached its capacity? Well, in that case, you're out of luck. You can't go in because the Springs as a whole is at its capacity. But hey, that fee charge will go ahead and get waived for you, so you do have that. Now, what do we know about what's actually reopening so far? Not too much. Disney has not released an exact list as to what's opening on May 20th, but we have heard from one newspaper that's confirmed that Planet Hollywood, Earl of Sandwich, and Chicken Guy will be amongst the places opening on the 20th of May. More is expected to be announced as we go. Now, on May 27th, we do know that Disney is announcing 3 of the things that they will be opening. So World of Disney will be open starting May 27th, Deluxe Burger for mobile orders, and also the Marketplace Co-op. So there's a little bit of what we know is opening and what is going to be happening over at Disney Springs. So unsurprisingly, definitely similar things to what we see in Shanghai Disneyland, although with some differences, like a slightly higher temperature, for instance. So if you're down there in Florida and you're over in that area, you can go ahead and head to Disney Springs starting on Wednesday. Now this leads us to our next story, which is really about the rest of the Disney parks and what we know so far, what we can expect. So the first piece to note is that while Disney Springs is reopening, it's not necessarily a sign that Disney World is anywhere close to opening. There are a few things to note. One, that really the size of Disney Springs economically, guest-wise, is incredibly tiny compared to Disney World as a whole. Disney World, even as far as Disney's parks throughout the entire world, is a gigantic portion. It's not a tiny enterprise. But the other important thing when we talk about what to expect in terms of Disney World versus other parks is that Disney World heavily gets its guests from outside of Florida. Unlike, say, a place like Disneyland, which is heavily the people nearby, or even Disney Springs as a shopping center, they can open it and we're going to have nearby people come, or even in Shanghai Disneyland or elsewhere, etc. A lot of those parks get a lot more attendance from nearby, as opposed to Disney World. And that makes things a lot more different for Disney World and when you expect it to open. So do not take Disney Springs to be any kind of real indication for when Disney World will open. Now that said, on the other side of news regarding Disney World opening, we did find out that some of the unions had reached a coronavirus protections deal with Disney World for when the park does eventually open. And part of what we learned is that there will be mandatory masks for both workers and guests, unsurprisingly. There will be paid time off for any cast member / worker who contracts COVID-19 so they can quarantine. And they're going to get trained. They're going to be provided thermometers to anyone who needs them, for cast members, I should say. Then there will also be precautions in place like plastic barriers at all the cash registers. They're going to put in place some kind of touchless transactions. Not sure if that's going to be a mandatory thing or just optional. And of course, increased cleaning, guest temperature checks, and safety training. Yeah, pretty much the expected stuff within there, as well as some extras. And as far as the rest of the world is concerned, general expectation is that Hong Kong Disneyland will be the next of the parks to open, and it's already been seen that they've been setting up some of those same social distancing measures over there at Hong Kong Disneyland outside the gates so as to be prepared for when it will open again. Now that said, we have no idea on what kind of time frame, and it could be announced quite close. Just like with Shanghai Disneyland, we didn't get a huge notice ahead of time for when it was going to open. About a week. And so that's what we can see with the parks around the world and where we are currently. So really not a lot of knowledge. Disney plays it quite close to the vest and we don't know for sure. And that makes sense. Disney doesn't want to go ahead and put out false expectations, especially when they're still experimenting as much as they are. And they also know that they can open a park with a week's notice and get plenty of people showing up. So they don't need to tell us months ahead of time what's going on. When will your park and your area open? Time will tell. Hopefully they will wait long enough to open so that the area and the environment actually is safe to do so. Okay, everybody, time for your favorite section. Bunch of quick little stories because this is the lightning round. First off, Hamilton is coming to Disney Plus on July 3rd. So this is a live capture of the Broadway show that was taken back in June of 2016. Which is supposed to be a really neat way to experience it, so hopefully they do a good job of filming, as that can be a trick sometimes with theater shows. Looking forward to it. We've got 3 quick bits of Mandalorian Season 2 news. First off, Katee Sackhoff has been confirmed to be in Mandalorian Season 2, playing a live-action version of her character over in Clone Wars and Rebels, which is Bo-Katan. Nice. Timothy Olyphant will be in Mandalorian Season 2. We don't know what part he's playing, but he'll be there. And finally, we have heard from CEO Bob Chapek that Mandalorian Season 2 is still on schedule to start airing in October. Nice. I'm glad that one's not getting delayed. I'm looking forward to that. The New Mutants is not coming to Disney Plus yet, it looks like. It has actually gotten scheduled for a theatrical release on August 28th. This is now the 5th different date that it has gotten for the theaters, as it's gotten pushed back again and again. Maybe this one will actually stick. Major League Soccer is apparently working on a plan which is currently under consideration to potentially resume their season at Disney World's facilities. Will anything more come out of that? We will see. Frozen on Broadway will not be reopening when Broadway itself finally reopens. We don't know when that's happening either, as that's not till at least September. Apparently, Disney will still be keeping Aladdin and Lion King continuing, but Frozen will be done on Broadway, but will be going out to the rest of the world. Finally, on a related note, we come to our final story, and it's a quick one about Frozen 2. Or rather, a documentary series about Frozen 2 coming soon to Disney Plus. The series will be called Into the Unknown, Making Frozen 2. And apparently this is a 6-episode documentary series, although all 6 episodes will be released on the same day, so they will come out Friday, June 26. Now that happens to be the Friday right after we finish up with the Disney Gallery The Mandalorian series. The 6-part documentary series is going to be looking especially at the final year of production on Frozen 2, where they were really doing a lot of work to finish getting everything together, and there was a lot of last-minute work in there. So it'll be interesting to see what we get to see behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll really get to look into some of the challenges that they actually did have, and also some of the amazing work that was done in there as well. Looking forward to seeing that come later next month. And you better bet I'm going to see that Frozen 2 documentary series and put up a video on it myself. And hey, so that's the news for this week. Did I miss any big Disney news stories? Hey, what do you think about the park reopenings? And are you excited about any of the new shows coming to Disney Plus? Gotta be at least one you are. Let me know down below in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to click subscribe if you haven't done it yet. And I will be back tomorrow with another new video. Have a magical day, and may the Force be with you always.